Okay, let's start Friday night because that's where the big reaction was. LSU loses 2-0. Everybody's freaking out. What were your thoughts on what went wrong at the plate Friday night?
Man, it was frustrating to watch. I mean, it was like watching the effects that kryptonite has on Superman. I mean, you're used to Friday nights at some point the Tigers figuring it out and coming through with the victory, and I really did feel the whole game that moment was going to come, the big hit or the big walk, big error by the other team, but it just never did. And they had a guy on the mound, a left-hander, who was unusual, and the fact that he threw extremely soft. He was 62 to 66 miles an hour with probably 20 or 30 of the 70 pitches that he threw. He was slinging that thing in there, and for the first pitch or second pitch of the at bat, and he really just did a great job of keeping LSU off balance all night. That's one of those things. It's like hitting the ball out of the sand trap. You just don't get to practice or see that type of speed very often.
Yeah.
It was certainly very effective on Friday night.
So Hunt Palmer talked about this the other day. He's like, people are complaining about like Coach Eddie Smith's like how he's teaching an approach at the plate, but like we don't really necessarily know outside looking in what that's like. But to your very trained eye, are you seeing anything from LSU at the plate like that you think needs to change, or how do you feel about how they've been approaching their at bats?
Well, I liked it the last couple games, but look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of new faces on this roster, and the Tiger fans, staying in suit or after 8 games now, or want to know what's wrong, right?
Yeah, man.
And I don't know that anything's necessarily wrong. I think that Coach Mainieri is kind of forced to find out here early in the season who can play and who can't, and he's obviously had a very open audition.
Yeah.
And that's part of the inconsistency. It's hard to have a consistent lineup when there's new faces in there every night. So I think the consistency everybody kind of yearns for will be, we'll start to see that more closer to the SEC schedule. But right now, I think that the underlying answer to what may be causing the inconsistency is all the new faces.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, man, Doug, for me at least, just as a spectator, and the crowd size maybe from the week would speak to this too. This is almost like it's a bit of preseason, right? I know it's technically not preseason, but in terms of, like you said, figuring things out so that you are at full strength coming to conference play. One thing they don't look like they have to figure out though is that pitching staff. And am I off base here? I've been saying it the whole time. Like, I don't care if you struggle at the plate. Like, if you had to choose, that's where I want to struggle. You can figure that out. You can't necessarily figure out pitching if you don't have the arms. They got the arms this year, Dougie.
Pitching and defense wins championships. I mean, that's it's the age-old adage. You've heard it forever, and that's right. They are very strong on the front end. They're extremely strong in their bullpen, and not just because they have guys down there with good stuff. They have guys down there with a lot of meaningful innings pitched under their belt. Fontenot last year in the Super Regional. Matt Beck's been out there a bunch. Vittmeyer's been out there a bunch. So that means something, right? And in college baseball, when you only have a kid on campus for 2 or 3 years, experience is everything. When you walk out there on the field at the box and turn around and look at the grandstand, there's 10,000 people there. And, everyone is going to be a little uncomfortable in that situation when they first go out there. But, as well as anyone, T-Bob, the more you go out there, the more you put yourself, or the more you get that opportunity, the less nervous you become and the more comfortable you are out there performing. So and this year's pitching staff, you don't need a whole lot of that. I mean, even Mikhail Hilliard, the list goes on of guys that truly have been out there before when the chips were on their line. And as far as the front end goes, Marceau and Labus this weekend threw the ball about as well as you can. Marceau kind of set the bar on Saturday through 80 pitches in 8 innings, which I don't know that I've ever seen at the box. That much efficiency. It was incredible. 61 strikes out of 80 pitches. That's just off the charts. And then A.J. Labus kind of followed it up the next day. He looked as good into the 4th inning when LSU had a 10-run lead. He kind of had to start abandoning the breaking stuff and going more with fastballs, and he was still beating them by just locating his fastball. And then on the front end, Cole Henry, I've said it already. I think he's got a chance to have one of the best seasons in the history of LSU, and I think he's going to pitch a long time once he leaves LSU.
Talking to Doug Thompson here. Catch him on the LSU broadcast, Eagle 98.1, every single baseball game. Doug, you mentioned defense wins championship. How about the freshman catcher, Alex Milazzo? I mean, he got it done at the plate this weekend as well. He hit 278, scored 4 runs, but I mean, I think it was yesterday's game where they try to bunt on him. He gets the guy out at second. Like, what have you seen? I guess as a pitcher, how good does it make you feel knowing that you have a defensive force like that behind the plate?
Oh man, as a pitcher, the confidence when you have a guy that's going to cover up the ball in the dirt and throw anybody out that even thinks about running. It changes the whole defense. He's the cornerstone of the defense. It's in my opinion one of the most important defensive positions on the field, if not the most important. I mean, the guy's touching the ball every single pitch. And as far as like his stuff, he's got a big league arm. I mean, he lives with a pop time of under 2 seconds, which, that's the time that it takes from the ball to hit the catcher's mitt until it goes down to second and actually hits the shortstop or second baseman's mitt. So he lives under 2, and that's what scouts are looking for. I was a little concerned, like, is he going to be able to swing the bat? He's a freshman too, and he's handled himself nicely up at the plate so far. But honestly, behind the dish, that's the guy that can hit 200 as long as he can play like Milazzo can play. Alex Milazzo, just based on his defensive prowess alone, another guy that's going to get a chance to play baseball for a long time.
Yeah, and then to go back to the staff, I'm trying to figure out like kind of where everybody's roles lie, or maybe eventual roles. Like you said, we're still trying to figure all these things out. With what you've seen out of Jaden Hill thus far, what do you think the most value that he brings to the team? Like where is that?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm gonna give you the Switzerland answer. He's so talented, T-Bob, that he could pitch on the front end and be one of the best starters in the SEC, or he could pitch at the back end and be maybe the best closer, one of the best, closers in the SEC.
Yeah.
He's as polished as can be. He locates his fastball well. He's minimum effort. He throws a slider in there for a strike. His changeup may be his best pitch. He's a giant. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, the perspective value of that kid is off the charts. In fact, I think he might be the top prospect of all players on this team.
Wow. Talking to Doug Thompson, the LSU Sports Radio Network, here on Off the Bench, brought to you by All-Star Toyota. Dougie, they're back on in the midweek this week. They got Louisiana Tech. What's your thoughts on these midweek games? How do you approach them versus maybe the general fan sentiment?
Yeah, well, it's a no-win for LSU. I'll tell you why. One, if LSU wins against La Tech, their RPI doesn't move. If they lose, the RPI goes way down. For La Tech, it's the opposite. If they lose to LSU, not really a big effect. If they win, of course, their RPI, it really helps their RPI. But look, I mean, this has been happening since the beginning of time. When those in the midweek games, when those in-state schools come to the box or LSU travels, they're going to put their 9 best on the field. They may even throw their ace pitcher out there to get off to a good start against LSU. Whereas LSU is going to take that opportunity, especially a year like this, to see if Maurice Hampton can play, second or center field, and to see if Cranford can really do it out at shortstop. And they're not going to throw Cole Henry. I mean, think about it. What would everybody say if Paul Mainieri ran out Cole Henry in the first 3 innings on Wednesday night against La Tech, right? So
I would not be happy.
So that's why you kind of see these games in the midweek turning out like they do. LSU is forced because of the grueling SEC schedule to see who they've got and who can get it done and who's hot right now. Whereas the other teams beating LSU in some cases is the biggest game of their season, but in other cases it gets them into a regional because of that one victory. So that's what I look for. I think that LSU will be competitive like they always are. I hope they get a couple more W's in the midweek. I know that we all hope for that, and I think this pitching depth will lend to that. I think we're going to see guys like Eric Walker out there again, a guy who's a veteran who's been out there for some big innings. Eric Walker, Mikhail Hilliard, and others to be on the bump for those midweek games, and I think again that puts us in a much better position to win those games.
So, Dougie, so you got La Tech on Wednesday, you got the Shriners College Classic this weekend. You're squaring up with Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma. As you enter these next few games, what are the biggest question marks? You touched on third base and center a little. Like, what are the biggest question marks that you think LSU needs to answer lineup wise?
Who's going to play short? I think it's a big one right now. Where's Mathis going to be, third or short? Who's going to play second? I mean, I think those are the two biggest questions: is who's going to be the shortstop, who's going to be the second baseman. It looks like Dugas was going to get an opportunity there, but he unfortunately took a ball off the head late in the game, off the helmet, I should say, and he's going to be okay, but had a concussion yesterday. But I think that's the biggest question, T-Bob.
Yeah.
Who's going to play those two middle infield positions? I think that's the one that everybody's kind of anxious to see how that turns out.
Doug Thompson, catch him on the broadcast with Chris Blair, LSU Sports Radio Network, right here on Eagle 98.1. Doug, thank you so much, man. And we're doing this every Monday, right?
I think so. Yes, sir. I think so. You guys will keep having me.
Love it. We'll always have you, Doug. Thank you, man. You have a great day.
All right, T. You have one too. Bye.